The battle with the heroes in All For One is at its climax, but regardless of who the victor is, Endeavor's life will be no more. In the last chapter of My Hero Academia, Endeavor was knocked to the ground with a nearly fatal attack by All For One, and blaming himself for creating everything that has been going on in his life and the world at that moment. While Endeavor was out of commission, Hawks, Jiro, and Tsukuyomi took over the fight against All For One with the plan of breaking All For One's mask, as that served as a life support for All For One. But All For One clearly was superior to the three heroes in the majority of this battle, almost killing each of them effortlessly. But the quirks inside of All For One began to rebel and fight against his consciousness. And this chain of events gave Hawks a split-second chance to slice All For One's mask and actually break a large portion of it, leading to the recent chapter of My Hero Academia where Jiro commands Tsukuyomi to attack now that they have an opening on All For One's mask. And in a blink of an eye, Tsukuyomi covers Dark Shadow in a black blanket to strengthen his next attack and punches down on All For One with Black Abyss Ephemeral Ragnarok, completely knocking All For One away while also breaking his mask. All For One was confused and questioned why he was unable to dodge the attack from Tsukuyomi with ease, and came to the realization that his senses must be lacking heavily. He continued to think that after the fight with All For One, which resulted in him losing his sight and ability to hear, that he still had a leg up on nearly everyone as far as perception due to the vast amount of sensory quirks that he possesses. From infrared vision to detecting vibration, All For One's awareness is leagues ahead of any ordinary human being. So why was his perception being disturbed at this moment? He concluded that it couldn't have been Jiro's quirk affecting his perception, and soon came to realize that the rebelling quirks within All For One were hindering him from using their original quirks to his liking. And after realizing this, what would happen next would change the tide in this battle forever. While All For One was going through his internal analysis, Hawks in his speedy fashion tries to blitz All For One. He said to All For One that he probably thought the students were there to buy time for Endeavor to return, but he should have thought twice. And as Hawks is beaming towards All For One trying to slice his head, something strange happens. Inside of the All For One Vestige world, All For One is seen eating the entire consciousness of a quirk user inside of his consciousness, with the potential mindset that consuming their consciousness will in return allow him greater control and free reign over their quirks. And the result of this would prove to be valuable for All For One and traumatic for the heroes. Hundreds of rivet stabs are randomly activated and attack every direction with the intent to kill. And one of those directions was headed straight to Jiro and Tsukuyomi. But in the blink of an eye, Hawk showed up to take the attack and protect the next generation of heroes. And with blood flowing from his back, Hawks looked back at All For One repairing his mask with his rivet stab quirk, only to see that he was protected by none other than the #1 hero in Japan, Endeavor. Endeavor is seen punching through each of All For One's rivet stab, trying to protect Hawks and the students while also trying to put an end to All For One's madness forever. But during this attack, Endeavor was stabbed with rivets, resulting in the loss of his right arm. But he was so determined to take out All For One that he pushed through that pain, which led us into the mind of Endeavor, where we see him talking with his consciousness, which is manifested as his younger self. You are weaker than you were before. Your condition, your atonement, your mistakes, and your responsibilities. All those things ever did for you was expose how weak you really are. They turned you into the pathetic excuse for a hero you are now. You will never become a superhero, Enji. Endeavor's consciousness would continue to remind him of how he became who he is, by remembering the times of his youth when he saw a father trying to save his little girl from a villain and ended up as nothing more than a scorched lump of burning flesh. Or remembering just how jealous he's always felt towards the one true superhuman, All Might. Or even remembering the self-deprecated reason for making his hero name a word that means to work hard. And all of these memories made Endeavor frustrated at his own consciousness, to the point that he grabs its throat. But it continued and exposed to Endeavor that all he is a wretched soul who wants to flaunt his ugliness. You will never be like All Might and Deku. Endeavor realized that all this time he's been fighting a battle against his own weakness, and that now is not the time to embrace his weakness. The final thing that his consciousness told him is that he should never stop cursing his weakness, because after all, that is the only thing that Endeavor has been living for. This realization in Endeavor sparked a new fire, a new obligation that he must accomplish, and that newly found drive awakened Endeavor's quirk, giving him the ability to conjure up an entire arm of flames to replace replace his recently torn off arm. And with this armor flames, Endeavor attacks All For One with a mighty flash fire fist. And as the smoke starts to fade away from Endeavor's attack, we see that he was stabbed with more rivets that cut through a chunk of his side. And while standing in front of an injured All For One with one arm and a torn through side, Endeavor shouts that it is his duty to end this fight once and for all. Leading to the recent chapter of My Hero Academia where Endeavor's assault on All For One continues. All For One was able to somehow dodge Endeavor's massive attack at the last second, and mentioned that although he predicted this would happen, he never would have thought that Endeavor would be the person that made him relive the trauma of his fight between All Might 6 years ago. And in being brought back to that traumatic moment in his life, All For One realized that nothing is more dangerous than a wounded hero. Now, as All For One is still thinking, Endeavor in the blink of an eye speed blitzes All For One with the help of Hawks' fierce wings, completely taking All For One off guard and punching him to the ground with a massive flash fire fist, vanishing jet burn. Hawks then asked Endeavor why he didn't take that opportunity to finish All For One with a prominence burn, to which Endeavor explained that with All For One having his guard up, it would nearly be impossible to actually finish him off. And being that he can't use prominence burn as many times as he wants, he would first need to break through All For One's defenses with an abundance of physical attacks to make sure his final attack connects. And with a smile on his face, Hawks is relieved that Endeavor is back to having a controlled attitude in this fight. But little does Hawks know, Endeavor's blood is boiling with hatred. On the battlefield below, All For One is surrounded by heroes and villains fighting, where seemingly out of nowhere, beaming down towards All For One is Endeavor, forcefully trying to end All For One's life. All For One, however, activates a force field quirk to hold off Endeavor's assault, but Endeavor's power overwhelmed All For One so much that it broke through his defenses, and in a rage, Endeavor begins dragging All For One through the mud. As All For One is being dragged through the trees in the forest, he mentions to himself that his body seemingly won't listen to himself due to his mask being broken, and comes up with a quick plan to touch Endeavor, steal his quirk, and continue on to destroy everyone in the area. But in the moment he raises his hand to steal Endeavor's quirk, Endeavor uses a flaming eye beam to burn All For One's hand for good, telling him that the only thing All For One's hand has ever done was destroy people's lives. All For One then responded by telling Endeavor that he is no better, but All For One is a little too late, because Endeavor has already accepted that he too has destroyed many people's lives. Toya is but a product of my errors. The lives he's stolen, they're on me too. The past is immutable. My wrath, my resentment, and even my retribution woven together, they form the fabric of the future. And what is the future? It's the path for the youth to tread on. It's the endless possibilities. It's why I must prevail so that the sins of us adults don't become an insurmountable obstacle in the way of the youth. I will be the one to bear that punishment. I will be the one to end this so that I can keep looking over Toya. I will be the one to keep on hating myself. And as Endeavor is holding on to All For One, he unleashes his ultimate flash fire fist, Prominence Burn, completely burning All For One's body to a crisp, and explains that All For One is confirmed to not have any super regenerative abilities. But even if he did, there is no way All For One could have survived his Prominence Burn without a body like Shigaraki. So All For One is dead. Or so Endeavor thought. Did you really believe that I would step into the stage without some aces up my sleeve? You should know by now that this body is well past its expiration date. I have no use for it anymore. And that's why there's a little something I'd like to try. And while Hawks is screaming for Endeavor to get away, All For One's body begins to completely revive itself, seemingly to a time before his battle with All Might. Recreating his ears and eyes, All For One smiles at Endeavor and yells, "What made you think heroes were the only one prepared to risk their lives? Villains are also the most dangerous when wounded." And this newfound emergence of All For One immediately triggered Yoichi, the First One For All user, as he immediately told Deku that he has a bad feeling about what is currently going on. But just as he's about to tell Deku about All For One, Deku sees something in the distance, with a combination of shock as if it could be an enemy, but also calmness as if it could be an ally. Meaning that in the other countries of the world, villains are being defeated at a high enough rate for them to spare heroes to send to Japan. Meaning this might be the light that turns the tide of this treacherous war. However, this wouldn't affect the fact that we are about to be met with the truly terrifying power of All for One. Win your zone every single day.